Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain was falling heavily on the hospital windows, St. Mary's Memorial, that evening. Outside, lightning streaked across the sky, and thunder rumbled like a distant echo of the pain gnawing at those in room 208. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, stifling, almost unreal. It was as if time had stood still, suspended by each regular beep of the medical machines. These sounds, usually synonymous with control and care, now resonated like the ticking of a fatal watch. 6-year-old Emily Carter lay in this oversized bed, lost amidst white sheets and intrusive tubes. Her small face, usually so alive, beaming with laughter and mischief, was now ghostly pale. Her closed eyelids sometimes twitched, as if she were dreaming or struggling in an invisible world no one could reach. Bandages covered her head, arms, and torso, and a ventilator tethered her to life like a silk thread ready to snap at any moment. SES parents, David and Susan Carter, sat on either side of the bed, frozen in unbearable anticipation. David, a former naval officer turned professor, had always been a rock. But tonight, his posture was slumped, his shoulders trembling under the weight of a pain he couldn't express. He held Emily's small hand in his, stroking it with his thumb as if to remind her that he was there, that he loved her, that it wasn't all over. Susan, a nurse by profession but a mother above all, remained silent, her reddened eyes fixed on the monitor. She knew the numbers, the critical thresholds, the flattening curves. She knew that every minute that passed brought her closer to goodbye. 3 days earlier, their world had turned upside down. They were driving home from dinner at a friend's house, laughing together in the car. Then, in an instant, the shock. A drunk driver had run a red light and slammed into their car at full speed. The crumpled metal, the screams, the chaos. Emily had been thrown against the window, her small body shattered by the impact. Susan still remembered Ethan's scream, the panic, the flashing lights in the night. Since that moment, life seemed frozen in an endless nightmare. In a corner of the room, a little boy watched the scene silently, his fists clenched, his eyes wide. Ethan Carter, 10 years old, Emily's older brother. He hadn't said a word since the day of the accident. He was in the car too. He remembered the music playing, his sister's smile, and then, the metallic screech of the collision. Miraculously, he'd escaped with a few scratches, a broken arm, and a bruise on his head. But the wounds inside him were much deeper. Since then, he hadn't left room 208. He refused to eat anywhere else, sleep anywhere else, or talk to anyone. He'd been offered a place to go home with his grandparents, but he'd simply nodded no. He sat there silently, his eyes fixed on his sister, as if waiting for something, or someone. In the reflection of the window, Ethan watched the rain slide down the glass, like the tears he refused to let fall. He felt guilty, helpless, useless. He wished he could take his place. He wished he could turn back time, change the trajectory of that car. But he was just a child, and no one listened to him. The chief physician, the Dr. William Reynolds, entered the room. The tension in room 208 rose a notch, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Tall, with salt and pepper hair, Reynolds was a respected man, known for his calm and poise in the most critical situations. But tonight, his face was grim, his shoulders hunched, and his tired eyes betrayed exhaustion and helplessness. He approached the bed slowly, glancing quickly at the machines whose alarms had become more frequent, more strident. The electroencephalogram trace was irregular. The saturation was slowly dropping. Each reading confirmed what his heart still refused to accept. He turned to his parents, his face grave, and spoke in a low voice, as if he carried the weight of the world on his tongue. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," he said, meeting Susan's already broken gaze, "I am deeply sorry. We have tried everything. Medications, ventilation, neurostimulation. The teams have worked tirelessly for 3 days. But, there is nothing more to do. Emily is no longer responding. Her vital functions are collapsing one by one." A chilling silence followed. Susan brought both hands to her face and collapsed into sobs. Her tears rent the air like a mother's cry that no words could translate. She leaned over the bed, kissing her daughter's cold forehead, whispering broken words, pleas to God, to the universe, to anything that would still listen. David, however, remained frozen. Sitting with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped in front of his mouth, his eyes were empty. He wasn't moving. He was a man crushed by the unacceptable, falling into a world where his daughter would no longer exist. But in this heartbreaking chaos, a voice rose. Weak, but clear. Surprisingly firm. Let me try. All eyes turned abruptly. Ethan had stood up. He stood by the bed, straight despite his arms still being in a sling. His childlike face seemed suddenly matured by the ordeal, illuminated by an inner flame that no one had noticed until then. His eyes shone with a rare intensity, a mixture of sorrow and absolute faith. Ethan, my darling, Susan tried to say between sobs, it's not that simple. Doctors. But he interrupted her gently, in a calm but determined voice. No, Mom. I want to try. I have to try. I know her better than anyone. He turned to Dr. Reynolds. You've tried all your tools, but I want to try with my heart. Let me talk to him. Let me do something. Just, let me be his big brother. A long silence followed. The doctors looked at each other, hesitant. Some nodded in puzzlement, as if witnessing something surreal. A nurse tried to intervene, but Dr. Reynolds raised his hand to stop him. He looked at Ethan for a long time. He no longer saw a child. He saw a brother, a protector, a being driven by something stronger than fear. All right, he finally whispered. Do what you have to do, Ethan. The medical team slowly backed away. The beeping continued. The storm still rumbled in the distance. But in this small rectangle of light, in this freezing room at St. Mary's Hospital, a light had risen. Ethan slowly approached the bed, his footsteps were almost silent on the tiled floor, as if he were afraid of disturbing a delicate balance between life and death. Every movement was imbued with gravity, but also with unconditional love. He cautiously climbed onto the small chair beside the bed, his legs trembling with emotion. Once settled, he reached out and took his sister's hand. The hand of Emily was cold. Inert. Fragile like an autumn leaf left on the sidewalk. Susan, the mother, fell to her knees in tears, praying aloud without even realizing it. David, the father, stood frozen, unable to tear his gaze away from his daughter. His trembling hand covered his mouth, as if to hold back a cry of relief that was too loud. In the days that followed, the story first spread around the hospital. Nurses told each other about the miracle moment. Doctors exchanged silent glances in the corridors. And then the rumor spread beyond the walls. A local journalist heard about this little girl brought back to life thanks to her brother. And what was just a whisper became a tidal wave. The media flocked, cameras on their shoulders, microphones in hand, hoping to capture a fragment of this magic. National networks opened their news with a headline that has become iconic. The miracle of the magic engine. Entire news reports were devoted to this story. Millions of people were shocked to hear the simple but moving words of a little boy with a huge heart. Some saw a supernatural connection between brother and sister, a bond so strong it defied death itself. Others spoke of the power of faith, of unconditional love. Scientists studied the phenomenon, while religious figures spoke of a divine sign. But no one could deny that something extraordinary had happened. When a reporter asked Ethan during a live interview how he felt, the boy, wearing his trademark blue beanie, looked down, almost embarrassed. I didn't do anything special, he said calmly. I just thought my sister heard me. And I did what we always did, the two of us. It was our thing. Our magic engine. In the corner, Emily, still weak but smiling, clutched a small pillow. She looked up at her brother, and his smile said it all. As for Dr. Reynolds, a respected man in the medical field for more than 3 decades, his testimony surprised more than one viewer. I'm a scientist, and I believe deeply in medicine. But what I saw that day, it wasn't a phenomenon that can be explained in books. It wasn't a treatment, nor a physiological reaction. It was something else. A connection. A strength. A faith. Call it what you will. I call it a miracle. 3 weeks later, Emily was discharged from the hospital. She was still walking slowly, but confidently. She had the look of a child who had seen the other side, and had decided to come back. That summer, true to their promise, Ethan and Emily finished their cabin in the old oak tree at the bottom of the garden. David helped them fix the planks, while Susan prepared picnic baskets just as they had dreamed of for so long. Their little world, once threatened with collapse, was once again blossoming under the sun. And every night, before falling asleep, Emily would gently place her hand on her heart. She would close her eyes, and whisper under her breath, "My magic engine will never stop, as long as my big brother watches over me." And somewhere, in the next room, Ethan smiled into the darkness. Because he knew, deep down, that their bond was stronger than anything. Stronger than fear. Stronger than death. It was an engine. An engine of love.